Now, what I want to do is talk about this second issue here. And Ross mentions something called pretonic reduction. So the first example is when syllables become open and propratonic. But now, in the second example, or second paragraph, he mentions that there are certain places where it's not the open and propratonic syllable that reduces the vocal shava, but a syllable that becomes open and pretonic. Okay? And he gives you this example, shofet. Shofet is the Hebrew word for judge. Okay? Judge. Just take a look at that word for a minute. How many syllables do I have in shofet? I have 2 syllables because I have 2 what? 2 vowels. What's the first vowel called? Holam vav. Everybody, holam vav. Say that. And the second vowel is called sere. Good. So 2 vowels. Where do I divide my syllables if I want to? I would divide it where?
Right after the holam vav.
Right after the holam vav, okay? So I'd put my dividing line right there, okay? So you guys all visualize that? I'm going to get rid of it for now, just to not clutter up my picture. Okay, now I want to make this plural, but I've got shofet. By the way, so the fate part, is that open or closed? Closed. Sho is open. Is fate tonic or pretonic? Tonic. And sho is pretonic, right? Okay, now let's make this plural. This is the masculine singular form for judge, shofet. Notice there's no ending here. And so I want to add a kirik yod and a mem. Okay, the tate will no longer close the syllable. It's going to slide over and take the kirik yod, vocalic ending vowel, and create a new syllable. And where's my tone going to go? Tone's going to go to the end, so that's now tonic and closed. The fe is no longer tonic, it's pretonic, and it's not closed anymore, it's open. Sho is still open, but it's propratonic, right? Okay. Now, in this situation, since it's under paragraph number 2, the syllable that becomes open and pretonic here is the one that's going to reduce to vocal shava. Even if I wanted to reduce the sho open propratonic syllable to vocal shava, could I do that? No, because holam vav is historically long and therefore unchangeably long, right? So what Hebrew's going to do here is reduce this open pretonic syllable to a vocal shava. So instead of shofetim, it's going to become shofatim, okay? Shofatim. And once that happens, the whole syllable structure would have to be relabeled if I were dividing, right? Because can I divide to a left of a vocal shava once the vocal shava is in place? No, I always divide to the right of my vocal shavas, right? And I can't really consider this an open pretonic syllable anymore because I've reduced it to vocal shava. So my syllable structures would all change now. And that would be open and pretonic. And if I were dividing, I'd divide to the right of that vocal shava, right? So that's basically what the syllable divisions and labeling would be after I've done all the work I just did. But here's the point, okay? Shofet became shofatim. This is where I had vocal shava occurring in an open pretonic syllable. It reduced to vocal shava. Now the way Ross describes the changes here make it sound like it's completely and totally unpredictable. Yeah, sometimes you reduce the open propratonic syllable to vocal shava, and sometimes you reduce the open pretonic syllable to vocal shava. Okay? But there's actually a method to the Hebrew madness here. And here is the method. What's really going on in the second paragraph is what I've told you to write down as the verb reduction pattern. Okay? That is to say, open pretonic reduction to vocal shava is a pattern that verbs follow. open propertonic reduction to vocal shava, the first paragraph, that is the pattern that nouns follow. And what Ross has done is he's given you a word as your example of two that looks like it is a noun, but as a matter of fact, it is actually a verbal form. It's a verbal form. Now, in this class, many of us have already done some Greek, right? In Greek, you also have verbal forms that can function as nouns. They are called participles, right? You remember your participles from Greek. Participles are verbal forms that function as adjectives. I like to repeat over and over again. I think I do this in my sleep. Participles are verbal adjectives. And something we're going to talk about in chapter 9 is how adjectives, not just verbal adjectives, but any adjectives can function as attributive adjectives, the blue boy. They can function as predicate adjectives, the boy is blue, or they can function as nouns or substantives, substantival uses of the adjective. And we would say something like the blue one, if the word blue, the adjective, were functioning as a noun. Participles are verbal adjectives, so they could do the same thing. And what I have here is a situation where shofate, the word we started with, let me rewrite that. Shofate is technically a participle functioning as a noun in Hebrew. It comes from the verb shafat, which means to judge. And it's like the participle. When the participle is functioning as a noun, it's like taking a verb and adding er to the end. So shafat means to judge. A shofate participle is a judger. Well, what's a judger? A judger is a judge, right? A judger is a judge. If you take the word sofer, in Hebrew, that's a participle as well, functioning as a noun. A sofer is a scribe, okay? And it follows the same vowel pattern here. A writer, right? Or a counter. So this is technically a verbal form. And that's why when I add the eem ending to shofate, and this becomes open and pretonic, verbs reduce that open pretonic vowel to a vocal shava. Okay? It's just that the word shofate, when he tells you that's the word judge, looks like a noun. But it's technically a verb. It's a verb form. Okay? So, right now, you're not going to know which nouns or things that look like nouns are technically verbal forms that are functioning like nouns. You're going to learn that later. Okay? But I'm dividing the patterns up now because when we start learning verbs, you're going to see verb reduction of open pretonic syllables of vocal shava over and over and over again. And I'll remind you, yeah, this is what verbs do. This is verbal behavior. For now, we're focusing on nouns and adjectives. And nouns and adjectives do the first one. Nouns and adjectives reduce their open propertonic syllables of vocal shava. And we're going to see that over and over again. Okay? In 8.2, we deal with a category of nouns called Sehgal nouns. Sehgal nouns. Well, what word do you see embedded in the word Sehgal? Ah, yes. And Sehgal is what in Hebrew? It's a vowel. It's a well, it's short, yes, but it's a vowel, right? That's what I want you to remember. So here are two characteristics of Sehgal nouns, number 1 and number 2 here. Number 1, Sehgal nouns are a kind of noun in Hebrew that are always characterized by first syllable stress in the singular. They are always characterized by first syllable stress in the singular. The first Sehgal noun on your list on page 77 is the word eretz. So look at eretz there. I've got that written down for you here. Do you see that the stress is on the first syllable here in eretz? It's not eretz, but eretz. Okay? So you're going to see that accent mark there on first syllable in the singular. Sehgalit nouns are so committed to first syllable stress in the singular form that you won't find a Sehgalit noun in the singular without an accent mark there on that first syllable. And it loves first syllable stress here. When we get to a later chapter, we'll understand why this is, but just want to make sure that you're clear that this is always the case. Now, the second characteristic of Sehgalit nouns is that it's characterized by a double Sehgal pattern under the first two root letters. So I've got three consonants or root letters for this noun. Under the first two, I see the double Sehgal pattern here. Okay, and that is not an always kind of situation, but a frequently kind of situation. So I'm going to rewrite this because it doesn't look very clear. So this is not always, but frequently. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at the list of nouns. Oh, well, let me do one thing. Let me just back up here and just write the word that you have been thinking about, the word davar, okay? Sehgalit nouns are nouns. The word davar is a noun. So they're both nouns, all right? Is davar a Sehgalit noun? No. It doesn't pass the smell test, does it? It neither has first syllable stress. It's not davar, but davar, stress on the end. And there's not a Sehgalit anywhere to be found, right? I don't care if you get your Hebrew electron microscope out, you're not going to see a Sehgal here. So, davar is different, all right? Now, let's read your list of Sehgalit nouns, and I'll just point out that for these two characteristics, we're going to see that this is borne out, okay? So the word eretz is earth or land, right? First syllable stress and double Sehgal. Look at the second one. We're going down in our column here. Derech. That is the word for way, path, road. So, what do we have here? We have a Sehgalit noun. Notice I've got first syllable stress, derech, and I have the double Sehgal pattern. You've also met the word kesef, haven't you? Kesef is the word for silver or money. Notice it's got first syllable stress. Kesef. And it's got the double Sehgal. The top of the second column, karam. This is another word you've learned. Vineyard. Double Sehgal and first syllable stress. Karam. This is a Sehgalit. Melech. You guys know Melech is king. MLK. Martin Luther King, right? And it's got first syllable stress, double Sehgal. That is definitely a Sehgalit noun. Now we have, on the bottom of our second column, a Sehgalit noun that doesn't look as much like a Sehgalit noun as the other ones. And it's the word na'ar. You learn na'ar, right? What's na'ar mean? Youth, lad, boy, servant, right? Attendant. What happens here is that na'ar would love to be a Sehgalit noun with double Sehgal. Okay, because that's what Sehgalit nouns like. So under ideal circumstances, the word for youth or lad would be ne'er, with first syllable stress in the singular. But I have a problem here, and that is that I've got right here a letter ayin right in the middle of this Sehgalit noun. What can you tell me about ayin? It's a guttural. And what are our guttural characteristics? Okay, yeah, let's write those down. Okay, let's just review our guts here for a second. Okay, gonna stare at our guts. What are the characteristics of gutturals? Well, we got to know what the gutturals are. What are they? Remind me. Ayin, Hey, Het, Aleph, and my guts wannabe is Resh. Good. What are my three characteristics? The first one is no dagesh forte. Remember, guts don't take no dagesh from anyone. The second one is no vocal shava. What do we put in place of it? Compound Shiva. What about silent Shiva? Silent Shiva is okay. Rule number, or characteristic number 3, they prefer a kind of vowel. What kind? A class. They prefer A class vowels. And then Aleph has a preference for Sehgal. When it can get a Sehgal, it does like that, okay? So those are our characteristics of guttural consonants. Let me just bracket that off here, okay? Make sure that you are thinking about this. You go home, tell your honey all about gutturals, okay? Have a good deep conversation about it over dinner tonight. Okay, so it's this third characteristic that's affecting the form na'ar. I'd like to see net-air, but gutturals prefer A-class vowels. Why? Because they are produced in the back of the throat. That's why that furtive pathak also sneaks in when I have gutturals at the end of a word. Okay? So it says, hey, give me an A. Hey! Right? Like cheerleaders. Give me an A. A. Okay, so here we go. We've got not double Sehgal, but double pathak. I get an A vowel before the ayin and an A vowel under the ayin. So ne'er is actually going to be written na'ar. Na'ar. Okay? Na'ar. And it's all because of the guttural right there. That guttural right in the middle of the word. Okay? So, does it look like a Sehgalit noun? Well, the first characteristic of Sehgalit nouns is that they, in the singular, always have what? First syllable stress. So that is definitely behaving like a guttural. It's following the always characteristic of Sehgalit nouns. It doesn't so much look like a Sehgalit because of the double pathak. But remember, that's only a frequently seen characteristic, but not a hard and fast, ironclad rule. Okay? Look at the next 3 in the final column on the right of your book. We have sefer. Sefer. That's a new word for you, I think, and this is the word for scroll or book. Scroll or book. Does it have first syllable stress? Yes. Does it have a double Sehgal? No, but it at least has one of the two I'm looking for, right? So it looks sort of half-like, maybe 2/3 like a Sehgalit noun. That's okay. We can tell it's a Sehgalit noun. Next, Eved, everybody. Eved is what word? Servant, slave, right? And it has first syllable stress and the double Sehgal, so that makes us happy. And then look at the last one. This is Kodesh. Kodesh. This is the word for holiness in Hebrew. Holiness has first syllable stress. Kodesh. It doesn't have 2 Sehgals, but at least it's got 1. Okay? So it's, again, following our pattern. Now, the issue with Sehgalit nouns here has to do with how they form their plural. So let's take a common Sehgalit noun, melech. I'm going to write it right there. Okay? So here's melech. Where's my accent on melech? First syllable. It's a Sehgalit noun. First syllable stress. Okay? And remember, Sehgalit nouns in the singular are committed to first syllable stress. But what happens? What happens when I want to make melech plural? First of all, you have to remember which vowel you add to melech or any vowel that's masculine, or any noun that's masculine. So what am I going to add to melech to make it plural? I'm going to add im, okay? That's going to be very normal, adding im to any noun to make it plural if it's masculine. But now I've got a problem, right? Because I told you that im and ot, the plural endings, are like the really large kids that get at the back of the rope in tug-of-war, and they're going to pull with all their might and pull the stress where? To the end. Well, here's the question. Which is stronger, the fat kid at the end of the rope or the Sehgalit's commitment to first syllable stress? The end of the rope is stronger. Okay? These vocalic endings are stronger, and they will overpower the first syllable stress of the Sehgalit. So that's why my characteristic of Sehgalit nouns is that they have first syllable stress And you've really got to make sure you've got this underlined or highlighted in the singular, okay? In the plural, they give up the ghost, all right? They will not retain that first syllable stress in the plural. So what's going to happen here with melech then? Before I can add eem to melech, I've got to make a couple of changes. The first thing is if I'm going to extend my word out, you see melech ends with a final cough, doesn't it? Can I just add eem to a final cough and leave the final cough there if it's not final anymore? No. Got to change it to the non-final cough. What does that look like? Well, it looks like this, right? So melech needs to be rewritten. And by the way, if you're having to do this for a quiz, you're just going to have to rewrite the word, okay? So melech needs to use the non-final form of the cough. Then I'm going to add eem there, okay? But the stress can't stay here on the mem, right? It's going to surrender its stress to the fat kid at the end. So the stress is going to go over here. Now when that happens, the Sehgal pattern that we're seeing is, with that double Sehgal here, that's characteristic of Sehgalite nouns when they're singular. But when I add the eem ending, these vowels are going to change. And this is why it's in this chapter. We're dealing with vowel changes. The first two vowel pointings are going to change, and they are going to follow the pattern of the word davar that we have already seen, which is a vocal shava followed by a kametz, right? Remember when davar becomes plural, how's it written? It's de, va, reem, okay? And that's what we want to focus on, is the vowel pattern under the first two letters, vocal shava, kametz. That vowel pattern applies to all my Sehgalite nouns when I pluralize them. Melakim. So you're not going to keep the double Sehgal. It's not going to be melechim. Okay, melech doesn't become melechim. It becomes melakim. Melakim. All right? So, let's take a look at a couple of examples of this in our text. Okay? Let's take the word na'ar, okay, which we've already seen. Is that a Sehgalite noun? Na'ar.
Yes.
It is. Okay? I want to make it plural. I gotta ask, is na'ar masculine or feminine? Which is it? It's masculine. So which ending do I want to use? Eem or oath? I want to use eem, right? So I'm going to add eem to the resh on na'ar. Where's my stress going to go when I make the Sehgalite noun plural? It's going to go to the end. That vocalic ending pulls the stress all the way to the back over here. I'll put it in parentheses just to remind us. And then I'm going to have to make some changes to my accent mark and my two vowels. What are the vowels I have to put under the first and second root letters? First one gets a vocal shava, second one gets a kametz. Okay? So the plural of na'ar is not na'arim. I don't keep the singular Sehgalite nouns vowels there. I have to switch them to the davar plural form. Davarim, vocal shava kametz. So it's na'arim, 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 boys, lads. Okay? And then let's take eretz as another example. Eretz has the double Sehgal in the singular. Do you remember what gender it is? It's feminine. That's right. It is a feminine noun. So, when I want to make it plural, I'm going to add what? I'm going to add oath to the end, right? Do you see that sadi here on eretz? Is that a sadi that I can leave in the middle of the word? No, so I have to change that to the non-final sadi, right? So it's still a sadi, we just have to rewrite it since we're adding more to the word. So I've got sadi here. Okay, where's the stress going to go? Is it going to stay on the a of eretz, or is it going to go to the oath? It's going to go to the oath, right? You got to go to the ending. So I can't keep my accent over here. Now, what about these two vowels that were under the first two consonants? When I make eretz plural, can I leave them there? The answer is no. I'm going to put a vocal shava under the first root consonant, kametz under the second. Now, that would almost be sufficiently okay, but I've got this problem, you see. Gutturals don't take dagesh, right? They don't take vocal shavas under them. They get compound shavas instead, right? So can I leave a vocal shava under that aleph there? No. What kind of a compound shava am I going to get? I'm going to get the A-class variety, the one with the pathak, okay? So it's going to look like that. So that's one modification. Vocal shava is not okay. I got to put a compound shava. So that's what it'll look like. Let me just rewrite that a little bit because it's a little bit messy. Okay? So aratzot. Aratzot is the way to say lands. Aratzot.